how do so many people assume that they still have 60 days left, when their I-94 has already expired and their grace period is actually zero?
Sure. So when we're talking about the 60-day grace period, typically it is for a lot of work visas, especially the H1B. So the general rule that a lot of people think is whenever they're out of a job, they automatically have 60 days left. And this rule comes with a lot of restrictions. And what we are seeing is we are seeing a lot of NTAs, notice to appears, being issued for a lot of people because not everybody has the 60-day grace period. And there are certain limitations on the 60-day grace period, especially when it comes to H1B. And I think you're right. A lot of people assume that when they're on H1B, they just lose their job. They automatically have 60-day grace period. That is not always true. So the first and the foremost thing, like you said, is the I-94. Everyone should always check their I-94. So I-94 is the drop dead date on when somebody has to leave the country. So nobody can exceed their I-94 date. And what that means is if somebody just lost their job, usually the general consensus is, yes, somebody has 60 days of grace period. But there is a small caveat. And the first and the foremost thing is I-94. Everybody has to always check their I-94. The 60-day grace period is applicable only if the I-94 is still valid. So if somebody's I-94 is expiring, say after 30 days, they lost their job, they only will have 30-day grace period, not really 60 days. So you cannot exceed your I-94 end date. So you always have to look at what your I-94 says, and everybody should know how to check their I-94 because there is a lot of confusion on I-94. When you come into the country, whenever the Customs and Border Patrol inspects you, they give you a I-94 and you can download that I-94 online. You can go to the CBP website, you can look at your I-94 and there is that I-94. And then when people are doing H1B transfer or H1B extension and so H1B amendment and so on, USCIS in their approval copy will also issue an I-94 and that I-94 does not get updated on the CBP website. So everybody should know that there is a USCIS I-94 in some cases and then you have the CBP I-94. And there is something called last action rule. And what the last action rule says is when you have two different agencies give you an I-94, maybe in this case CBP and USCIS, the last action rule always says that whatever is the most recent action, the last action, you have to take a look at that I-94. And that I-94 is the I-94 that you have to follow. And unfortunately, what we are seeing is a lot of people sometimes just look at their CBP I-94. And if they have another action, a last action from a recent I-797 approval, they sometimes don't see that I-94 or vice versa.